First weekend of June, we want to start from seed. What's our best option to plant from seed right now?
Okay, your best option to plant from seed is root crops and probably beans and corn, if you wanted to take the space with corn. The tomatoes and the peppers should be started from plants because in a packet of seed, you're going to get maybe 30 seeds of one kind of pepper and one kind of tomato. And some people want a variety, so it's better just to buy one of each plant in a smaller growing environment.
Okay.
And generally people buy a small tomato, like a cherry tomato, and something that's slicing or bigger, unless if they're going to make sauce. If they're going to want to maybe have 2 or 3 tomato plants, they have room for it, they're going to want to make sauce and you want to get 3 of the same variety. That way they produce all at the same time and you'll get the quantity for making a sauce.
Okay. What about like greens, spinach, chard, kales? Are they going from seed?
Yeah, those generally can go from seed this time of year. Right?
Pretty much all year.
Right. If you wanted to do lettuce, even though it's a winter crop, you can do microgreens, which means you can seed a bed of lettuce in. When it gets about 1 inch or so tall, harvest it, because otherwise it'll go to seed and it'll bitter.
Right.
Tell us about, I've read a little bit about this, the mycorrhiza.
Okay.
Tell us about that.
Okay. Most good fertilizers and good soils have bacteria in it. A lot of good bacteria. That's why they say you have a live soil or dead soil. Dead soil is when you use a lot of chemical fertilizers because it kills actually the live bacteria that breaks down the fertilizer. But with organics, they need the bacteria to break it down, and so thus, a lot of times, the bacteria is included in a fertilizer or is already in the soil and just needs to be activated. No. The mycorrhizal bacteria, what it does is it basically works with the plant roots and allows the roots to be having more surface area so they can take up more nutrients and water at the same time. And it's a live bacteria, so actually all the fertilizers are dated because it can only live in the box for so long or in the container and all. But a lot of times after you add it to the soil or it's in the soil, it'll multiply with good fertile soil.
I feel so much smarter now. That was a great explanation.
Right now, we're leaving spring and coming into summer, so it looks like we have a lot of options. Mm-hmm. And you had mentioned before, some from seed, some from starters, and we're actually surrounded by a lot of starter plants right now.
Right.
If we had one dedicated 2x4 box and we wanted to maximize the amount of food we can get out of it, what would you suggest? A combination of seed and starters, or would you say, what would you think?
Okay, what I would suggest is starting stuff from seed that takes a long time to germinate and that you only need 1 plant of, not 10. For instance, peppers and tomatoes, an eggplant. You're going to only need 1 or 2 or 3 of those plants, and by buying a started plant, you will be able to choose different varieties, so you can have a multitude of varieties. For stuff that you can eat a lot of, like lettuces and radishes and turnips and things like that, you're going to want to buy seeds. It's a lot cheaper. And when you plant them, as they get bigger, even though you plant them close together, you can thin them. And you can use them as small vegetables and a lot of times eat even the leaves that go along with it. So that type of thing. The other thing you want to realize, if you don't have a lot of garden space, when you start growing stuff that's quick, you want to stagger your crops, which means you want to go ahead and plant some and wait till it's up and growing and plant some more, so that we have a continued supply of the material. Corn is really easy to grow. The seed's about 1/4 inch in size, so you bury it about 1/2 inch. But some people just don't want to do that. They want to have already started plants and all. But for those that do start the easier stuff from seed, then you would have things like eggplant. This is a Black Beauty eggplant, which means it's a large pear-shaped eggplant. You don't eat that many eggplants, and you might only want 1. So you could go ahead and plant this. As a rule of thumb, an eggplant's going to need about a 1 by 1 foot or about 1 by 1.5 foot area to grow properly in.
Okay.
You know, if you were doing something like squash, okay, if you were doing a squash plant, you'd notice that you don't need that many squash plants. So you'd buy a single squash, but the nice thing about squash, it doesn't have to be in the box. You plant it in the box, you let it trail out of the box so it doesn't take up that excess room. Plus, having the squash or the pumpkins or the cucumbers not sitting on the soil is beneficial, so they don't have any rotting going on when it sits on the soil. So this you would plant in the corner or on the edge of the box in order for it to grow out and not take up that additional space that you need for other plants.
Cool. And I just wanted to say, Bill had mentioned that a lot of people are afraid to start from seed. I came into the place early March. I've been growing since I've lived here for about 3 years. I've been growing every year. I've always come here, and it was the first time I went from seed, and he talked me into it, and he said, don't be afraid of seed, you just plant it, it takes care of itself. And that is exactly what happened. I planted the seeds, I waited a week, I was totally nervous. Nothing was happening. I thought I ruined it. And then one day they just started sprouting one after another, and I had rows and rows. And it was really cool because I got to let them compete with one another, and I got to pick out the weaker looking sprouts. So then I had left very strong survival fitted chards and spinaches and kales, and they actually grew really strongly, and as they got bigger I pulled out more and more to space them accordingly. And honestly, I felt so proud of myself that I was able to go from the seed, and now I feel really confident, and I totally recommend that for anyone. It's awesome to know how to do, and it felt really good.
Well, you know, gardening is a learning experience. You know, everybody has a different way of gardening. They have their different methods, and that's fine because you can create your own method, whatever's successful to you, and there will be some failures, but that's okay. Don't give up on it. It could have been something like the seed was planted too deep or it wasn't quite the right time of the year, and that's all about gardening, is not only the fun of production, but the fun of experimentation. And jot notes down and make sure that you remember things, because it's a repetitive thing. Year after year you'll be doing it, and it's always good when you plant in your boxes to rotate your crops around in the box. Never plant all of them in the same place at the same time every year. It's good to go ahead and move them around, making sure that the taller plants are in the north, so that way the southern exposure will expose all the other plants to as much sunlight as you can possibly do. Okay, as the list showed you, you want to plant for the season. A lot of times you'll go in a seed rack, and we carry all organic seeds, but you go in the seed rack, you'll see many different seeds. You want to know what to buy because this is seeds generally for all year. So this time of the year, if you were growing beans, okay, these are a bean that's good for this time of the year. There's two types. There's a pole bean and a bush bean, and that'll tell how these grow, whether they need to be staked or not. If you just going to plant a few, then a packet of seed would work because there's quite a few seeds in them. Most seeds will last for a year, maybe 2 years, depending on how you store them. Sometimes if you want to grow a lot of seeds, then you would go ahead and come in and get seeds. We sell seeds by the bulk, by the shot glass full. It's a lot less expensive if you're growing a large crop of something and all. So you can get seeds to start the plants that you grow from starts, but like I said, they don't last for more than a year because a seed is a live embryo. As time goes on, the seed is living off itself, and so your percentage of germination drops each year because it's live and it's living off itself. The only time a seed will actually make its own food is after it gets its second set of leaves. So it's going to put a root down, it's going to come out of the ground and make one set of leaves, and then it's going to make the next set of leaves, and it'll start photosynthesis. So it's going to have enough food stored to do that whole route. So make sure that the seeds are fresh, that they're at least that year's or maybe the next year's, depending on the packaging, the quality of seeds. And make sure you don't buy a whole bunch for a few years. If you want to buy them each year, make sure they're fresh.